standing here not to... Microphone. Is there a secret to the microphone?
Up in front of you.
Yeah, but he can't. Doesn't seem to be on.
What if I speak into it?
Not on.
It's not on. Give me a signal. Yeah, that's a little bit about what I was going to say a moment ago, that technology is controlling us. I wasn't standing here getting ready. I was here to give the microphone and the camera a target. So it wouldn't just start looking around for someplace else to depict. Well, here we are. Welcome everybody to the New York Society for Ethical Culture. We have people here from numerous societies, from the White Plains Society, Westchester Society, from the Northern Westchester Society.
Yay!
From Brooklyn, from Riverdale. This is really great. It's great when we can really all come together. I hope there's someone here from the New York Society. Great. And of course, we are online as well. And there are some other societies that are tuning in. I know the Long Island Society is online, and I hope their technology is working well. Hi, Long Island. And the Washington Society is going to tune in until their regular program begins. So, welcome. Let me just ask a question. What is ethical culture? Why are we here? I have a short quote from the founder, Felix Adler, who said, "Let us conceive of a religion upon the basis of perfect intellectual honesty. Religion, if it is to mean anything at all, must stand for the highest truth. Religion need not be allied with dogma or complex theologies. A new kind of faith is possible, based not upon legend and mythology, not upon the authority of any single book, but upon the moral nature of human beings." And that is our pursuit here, to understand what that means. We're going to start with a children's story. And the children want to come up? Or let's start?
You want us to?
I'm getting directions from the director.
Hey, let's do it.
Yeah,
Let's go. Yeah.
All right. Good.
I know I don't look like a child, but, we all...
The call is for
Children want to come up? Come on. Come on up. I'll be a child with you, I promise. Come on up. If you want to, come on up. Climb up. Come on, go on stage. Come on, girls.
Well, we have separated ones.
Come on up. Come on up. Come on. Come on up. Even if you're an older child, you could come too. Totally. You're welcome at all ages of... That includes parents. Hi. You guys, we're going to turn and look at our storyteller who's here.
Now, this is a story.
Mom, you can come up too. Come up with him. Yeah, we'll move over.
Now, this is a story about our founder, Felix Adler, since we're talking today on Founders Day. And this is written by our own Judith Eckerson, and it's a wonderful story called A Very Observant Boy. You can't get back there. Okay. We'll speak for everybody. So this is how Felix Adler learns about charity. Felix Adler was a very observant boy. He was bright and did very well in school. Even after his school lessons were done, he kept trying to learn more. More about people, more about how he should behave, more about religion, more about ideas. Felix watched and listened, thinking of what his own place and what his own work might be when he grew up. His father was a rabbi, Samuel Adler, known throughout New York City as a good thinker and a kind and charitable man. Maybe if his older brother Isaac was not interested in being a rabbi, then Felix might do his father's work. He tried to learn about the work his father did as a rabbi, and so he asked his father to explain how to do charitable work. All over the world, his father explained, there were people who needed help. Some needed food or clothing or hospitals. It was the duty of every good person to give whatever help he could. The way to help was to collect money and to undertake an organization to distribute food or clothing or whatever was necessary. Rabbi Samuel Adler himself was especially interested in the needs of orphan children. So he gathered a number of people together to establish the Hebrew Orphan Asylum of New York. People at the temple were asked to give money to the asylum so that it could be a clean, permanent home for many orphans. Felix studied what his father told him. He observed how his father collected money to aid Jews persecuted in Morocco in 1860. How his father raised money for injured soldiers during the American Civil War in 1862. How his father was now collecting charitable contributions to help the starving Irish people during the potato famine. Many evenings at dinner, the family talked about these things. Sometimes Felix's mother, Henrietta, would ask them to hush and talk another time. This was often when there was a stranger at the table, and Henrietta didn't want to embarrass him or her. Henrietta wanted to be a good and charitable person too, but she had a different way from that of her husband. Her way was not to collect money to send somewhere. Her way was to ask needy people to eat dinner with her own family, and often to deliver food and clothing herself into the homes of people who needed it right there in her own city. Felix was a very observant boy. He saw that while his father organized groups and raised lots of money for needy people, his mother actually did things for them personally. Felix was beginning to feel an internal conflict between his father's way and his mother's way. Shouldn't a truly kind and giving person meet people, touch people, and give in a personal way? One day, Felix's mother heard about a poor family whose father had died in an accident at work. She knew that the family would need help, so she packed 2 baskets of food to take to them. Henrietta encouraged Felix to carry one of the baskets. They hired a horse-drawn carriage to drive them to the family's apartment house. Inside, Felix looked around their home, so different from his own. He listened as the mothers talked with each other. He was uncomfortable in the crowded, dirty room and awkward with the ragged children who spoke English so poorly. He was surprised that his mother acted with naturalness, friendliness, and kindness. When Felix and his mother came out, he asked, "Mother, in a week this food will all be gone. Shouldn't we do something the way Father would to make sure that the mother can get a job?" "Well, I'm going to invite them to dinner next week," she said, "and we'll talk about this." Father would start a neighborhood club to find jobs for anyone who needed them. He wouldn't just help one person at a time. "Oh, Felix," she said, "don't you see? A collection of money, as a neighborhood does help one person at a time, just more of them. Your father and I have no difference on that. We are each just better at helping in our own way." A few evenings later, after dinner, Rabbi Adler asked Felix to come into his study. "Your mother tells me that you've been watching how we do charity in our family. She says you are troubled that I send money while she goes and actually helps the poor and troubled people. I want you to know that's not entirely accurate." Felix wasn't sure what to say. He loved and respected his father very much. "Whatever you do, Father, I'm sure it's helpful." "No, it's all right that you want to understand. It's good that you want to do the right thing. Mother said we each help in our own ways Do you remember the temple's janitor, Mr. Mayer, who died a few months ago? His father said. Oh yes, he used to tell funny stories to his children and all the rest of us. Felix smiled when he remembered the kind man who worked so hard. I'm going to tell you something about his children. Do you know who pays for their rent and care and schooling now? The orphan asylum? No. The temple? No. Then who? Your mother and I. And Mr. Schloss helps too. Felix was an observant boy. After that night, he knew that giving was done not only best in his father's way, or only in his mother's way, but in both ways. And sometimes the best way was to do it and not even talk about it. And Felix knew that when he grew up, he wanted to follow the work of both parents. So that's our story about Felix Hadley. And we are all going to join this song now, which is in your, you should all have a songbook. This is another work of Felix Hadley. He actually wrote the words of it, so we're going to celebrate him today. David is
So children of every age are welcome to come with us. We're going to climb the Ethical Mountain all the way to the top. We're going to go and make something special for you, and then we're going to come back and bring it to you. So we need talents of all kinds and young people, I'll just say, of all ages. And please, there's some stairs here, guys. You can follow me. Come on, let's make a little parade. I'm going to collect people as we go.
Well, that was great. Well, welcome again to this Founders Day. This is a special Founders Day, May 15th of 1876. A good 140 years ago. Is this echoing? Yes. Or is this okay?
Bring it closer.
You want it louder?
Bring it closer.
I hear it so loud coming back to me that I can't jump. Bring it closer to me. Well, how's that? Better? Okay, great. I have the weight judges. But now I have to stand leaning forward. Okay. Well, as I was saying, this is a special Founders Day because 140 years ago today, a very young Felix Adler was invited by some supporters to start a lecture series. They hired a hall, standard hall. It had only 300 seats, and it was just down Broadway, 20 blocks on 42nd Street. Remember, in 1876, 42nd Street was way uptown, the outskirts of the city. Now, so many years later, it's over 80 years past Felix Adler's death. He had reigned over the society that he created for almost 60 years, clearly putting his stamp, imprint on the organization he created. And now, so 83 years later, we're still pursuing the project he began. You have to remember how rare it is for an organization that has such a dominant leader to survive his death. But here we are. We're actually a pretty vibrant group. We have 22 societies around the country. And along the way, along these years, numerous interesting people have passed through our doors as both members and as friends. And over the course of today, I'm going to be just mentioning some. Of course, in the course of the 20th century, everybody liked to claim Albert Einstein as a member of the organization, but actually, he was a supporter of ethical culture. He once said that ethical culture is really necessary for human survival. He said that after the atomic bombs had exploded. And he said that from this very stage in 1951. So today, what are we doing? We're going to celebrate a legacy of our past, of our present, and look forward to the future. And we're going to have several speakers, leaders and lay leaders of this ethical movement, to talk about little different aspects of our legacy. And the first person I want to introduce is Ann Clayson, who's the leader, is one of the leaders here at the New York Society. He's going to talk about institutions created by ethical culture and their lasting legacy. So, Ann?
Actually, I am here to introduce our community song. And as you will see in your program, it is an anthem of ours, and it is a song of peace. So I hope that you will all join us in a song of peace. And if you feel comfortable doing so, here in the New York Society, we like to stand because it makes it a whole body experience and engages our diaphragm. So please join us.
So,
now that we're all in full voice. It's so good to see all of you. Good morning. And of course, welcome to this meeting house.
The microphones are confusing the camera, so it thinks the top of your head is much higher than it's supposed to track you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to be talking about those parts of ethical culture that continue today. And Richard is going to, at different times, be talking to you about the past and some of the luminaries that we've had in this meeting house and speaking to our members. We're so very fortunate that we also have some activities that were started by ethical culture that still continue to this day. Not the least of which is our individual societies, and also the American Ethical Union and the International Humanism Ethical Union, and Bart will tell us more about that. What I'd like to tell you about is something that you may not be aware of, that has continued for many years, and that is the Hudson Guild Settlement House. One of my favorite dead leaders, John Lovejoy Elliott, who had such a big heart, and who worked in what was then called the Wild West of Chelsea. Got together some fellows down there to find a place to play basketball. They were called the Hurly-Burly Boys. And when he started working with them and he started realizing the needs that they had and the needs that their neighbors and their parents had, he started thinking about a way that he could make a larger community for them. And so, knowing about the settlement house movement, he started Hudson Guild. Another settlement house founded by one of our members, she was also a member of the Unitarian Universalists, was Lillian Wall, and she started the Henry Street Settlement. What I find so wonderful about these organizations is that unlike more traditional faiths, who certainly believed in charity, and as you heard from the story that Richard read, talked about how can we best offer charity. The settlement houses went beyond that, and they said, how do we live with our neighbors? How do we not come in and say, I know how to do it better, and I want to help you? Instead, they lived as neighbors, whether it was Jane Addams in Chicago or John Lovejoy Elliott in Chelsea, living with people and saying, what do you need, and how can I support you? I recently heard a student at NYU, where I'm a chaplain, talk about how he had many challenges growing up, but he also had a great deal of support from his family and from his teachers. Well, that's exactly what the settlement house did. It recognized all the challenges that people had and also gave them the support that they needed. Another organization that still exists today is the Encampment for Citizenship. And fortunately, after a hiatus, that has come back, and the fourth session of that will be this summer in July. It'll be at Amherst at Hampshire College. And so that was an institution that started with Algernon Black, with the great support of Eleanor Roosevelt, so that young students would have the experience of democracy. It's one thing to read about democracy, to learn about it. It's one thing to speak about it. It's quite another to live it. And that's what these students did. And for 20 years, they were housed at the Fieldston campus, where they learned about democracy, living with one another, and where they also had tremendous speakers, including Malcolm X and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And out of that came a leadership program that we still benefit from today. The Manhattan Borough President, Gail Brewer, is a graduate from the encampment, and we're looking forward to sending one of our students, Fabio Apollo. So that's a little bit about the history of the Ethical Culture Society that continues today. Thank you.
So some of these institutions that go on to have lives of their own remember their ethical culture past, and some really don't remember. It's been a long time. There are other settlement houses in New York, University Settlement House downtown, and Madison House. They were started by what was then the Downtown Ethical Society, and they're still going today, but they've kind of lost connection with their origins, but that's okay. That really is a testament to our effect on society. Another signature interest in ethnoculture has been education, of course. Many members of ethnoculture societies are and have always been educators. But did you know that people said that Lawrence Kohlberg, who is one of the leading developers of systems of how children learn ethics, was a member of ethnoculture? Margaret Mead was a member of ethnoculture, a great anthropologist. And great Bob Bergson, the leader of the Society in North Westchester, knows a great deal about the legacy of ethnoculture because he was not only a student of the ethnoculture school, but was a teacher there as well. And he's going to talk about education. Yes, come on. Oh, come on.
As Richard suggested, I was dragooned into speaking about the ethnoculture schools because I am a former student and a former teacher. So I can be considered in some ways, since I also went to the Riverdale Sunday School, a homegrown product, which some people say may make me a turkey. But I'm going to not tell the history of the schools and not list all sorts of famous graduates of the schools, but rather read a few words of Felix Adler about the schools and then tell 3 anecdotes, if you will forgive the anecdotes, at a somber occasion like this. In 1931, Adler spoke to the students at Fieldstone for the last time, and among the things he said was this: the school does not advertise itself as a school to get you into college. If we can do that, well and good. It does not advertise that it will make you successful in business. That is an incident. We do not want you to be unsuccessful. We do not want you to be inefficient. But what the school is for is to make a better world. And it counts on me, on the faculty, and on you. We are all cooperating. You are partners with the faculty and the founder and the many unnamed founders of this school in doing something big in helping to make a better world. In order to do that, to make yourself fit for such an undertaking, it is necessary that you should make something of yourself. You must cultivate your talents in relation to those of others. Adler in 1931 about the schools. Well, let me tell my first anecdote about the schools. When I was a student, we were discussing our ethics classes. The school was unique because from first grade through high school, ethics is a class. We were discussing the Brown versus Board of Education case, the issue of integration and segregation. We were talking about the issues in our ethics classes, while simultaneously, in biology, as it turned out, perhaps planned, Philip Cochran, biology teacher and member of the Riverdale Society, was talking about taxonomy. How do you organize the animal kingdom, the genus, and the species, and so on? At the end of that unit, he said to us, and now we're 14-year-old kids, he said, now that we're all scientists, what are we to make of this thing we call race? And all of our 14 or 15-year-old minds, the gears began to grind and slow down. Because we began to realize we had just understood that a species meant, you'll forgive the metaphor, that 2 members of the same species can meet and fall in love, or just mate, and have children together and continue the species. Well, son of a gun, that means that anybody all over the world can meet anybody else from another place in the world. They can fall in love, they can get married, they can have children. They can speak Swedish or Swahili, if those are native languages, or they can learn Chinese or French if they choose. We are all one species, we are all one race. It was an example of the schools putting together sort of ethical reflection and scientific understanding. And that, of course, left us with the question, but what can we do? And we found something to do. We picketed Woolworths on 110th Street in Broadway. I think it's now a drugstore. Because we knew that Woolworths didn't serve black people at their lunch counters in the South. And we were too young to go on the Freedom Rides, but we could at least picket wilderness. Anecdote 1. Anecdote 2 was told to me by Alton Smith himself. Alton Smith reminded me at one point that when he was a student at Fieldston, he and his mother were brought to me. They were dragooned like me. They were dragooned to the principal's office. But the principal, Mr. Tate, said to Alton Smith's mother, Mrs. Smith, I brought you here because there is a good likelihood that Alton will not be able to go to college because he will not be able to graduate because of his inattendance at classes and his failure to turn in homework. Now, I knew Mr. Tate because he was still the principal when I was with him, and I can imagine him saying that. And Mrs. Smith said, Mr. Tate, I did not send Alton to the Fieldston School to get him to college. I sent him to Fieldston because it is the ethical culture of the school. Anecdote 2. Anecdote 3. A former student of mine from Fieldston tracked me down from Boston, where she was living, to perform her wedding. And I should mention that the place she chose for the wedding, although her mother said the reception had to be at a fancy hotel, the place she chose for the wedding was the playroom of the Midtown Ethical Culture School, right upstairs, her favorite place. So the ceremony took place among jungle gyms and swings and slides. Now she was a very small, diminutive woman of Asian background who probably could not have spoken over the lectern. I may not be able to get that up, we'll see. Okay. She was then working, I believe the title was Deputy Attorney General of the state of Massachusetts in charge of civil rights. And she said to me at one point as we were talking about the wedding, law students would come through her office periodically and they would say, wait a minute, you're from a minority group, you're a woman, you have a prestigious Ivy League law degree, you could quadruple your income if you went into private practice. What are you doing here in the state attorney general's office? What she said to me was, the first time a law student said that to her, asked her that question, I quote, I drew myself up to my full height, and I said to that law student, I went to the ethical culture schools. When I was teaching at Fieldston, my students picketed too. They picketed Whitehall Street, the Army Induction Center downtown, to protest the war in Vietnam. Alton Smith did graduate from Fieldston. He became Smitty, a very much beloved gym teacher, coach for soccer, swimming, and track. A very, very special legend of the Fieldston schools. But he did graduate and came back to teach. My former student could have been listening to Phyllis Allen because she was doing work to make a better world. I'd like to think that the schools helped her make that direction of her life. And so I'm glad to have been a teacher and a student at Fieldston. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to introduce Joan Lewis, but before she gets up, did you know that the earliest political action, who's the boss here?
The camera is the boss.
No, it's looking for you. It's looking for you.
It likes
doesn't
me. It
want to
likes
see
me.
you.
It really likes me.
Now, so-
Move over. Go, Richard. Go for Richard.
What do I do?
So this is a bizarre camera. Let me take a look out here, folks. This camera follows you around. And would you please put the wave? Oh, no, it doesn't like
Now
it.
it's looking for a
It's a very fickle camera that has decided that the ceiling and the tops of our heads is so much more interesting than our faces.
I understand.
Which may be true, but it's not supposed to work. It's supposed to find your face and then hone in on it. All
Okay.
right. Yeah.
Reprise. Did you know that the earliest political action in support of the choice movement took place in the Westchester Ethical Society? In 1964, a conference of healthcare professionals was organized by member Sylvia Bloom. That led to the formation of a national political action group agitating the reform of the abortion restriction laws that were popping up across the country. And there's some notable successes, especially in New York State, and then, of course, the Supreme Court ruled in the early 1970s. Well, Joan is a leader of the Brooklyn and the Riverdale Societies, and she's also the leader member of the Board of the National Ethical Service, which is one of the oldest NGOs certified for the United Nations. We have a real presence there through National Ethical Service. Now, the NES began as a part of the Women's Conference. The Women's Conference was organized at the turn of the last century and were responsible for many of these wonderful initiatives that we've been talking about. And Joan herself writes about the women's history for Ask.com. And so she's going to come up and talk to us. And she was quoted last week's New York Times in an article about Harriet Tubman. So Joan is going to talk to us a little bit about the history of women within the movement. Great.
So I've been speaking on the topic of women of ethical culture for more than 20 years. I have to say that the material I have accumulated has expanded enough that it's now a 4-session course, not small enough for a regular platform address, much less a segment, so I'm really going to only share a few highlights here. And it's a history not without complications. Though the first woman speaker to address a Sunday platform of any ethical society was in 1886, Dr. Frances Emily White in Philadelphia. The first woman elected president of this New York society was in 1994. That was Dr. Judith Wallach. The women of ethical culture were not full members of this society for the first 14 years of its existence, but they were very active in the society's United Relief Works, set up only 3 years after the founding address by Felix Adler. For almost a century, and in many of our ethical societies, the auxiliary board, which became the Women's Conference, raised more money each year than the societies themselves did. There was also a ladies' auxiliary at one time at this society, and it had its own programs. After the New York Society opened up its membership to women, Felix Adler brought in Anna Garland Spencer in 1902 as the first leader of this movement, first woman leader of this movement, apparently thinking that she mainly focused on the needs of women members. While Spencer was already known as a noted speaker and writer on liberal religion and on social issues including racial justice, child labor, workers' rights, and women's rights. She clashed with Felix Adler in the latter. Spencer went on after her time here to become a founding professor at what is now the Columbia University School of Social Work. Now, it's pretty well known that Felix Adler did not support women's suffrage. He argued that it would split families, that it would result in, quote, even more ignorant voters. And once from the stage at Carnegie Hall, in a talk covered by the New York Times, he argued that women already had more political power than men because they could persuade their husbands how to vote. What is not as well known about our history, the Ladies Auxiliary organized a whole conference in 1894 on women's suffrage and women's rights. Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton spoke there. Anthony, in her talk, referred them to the previous time she'd spoken at the Society some 10 years before, a date that our records, unfortunately, don't seem to have recorded. And Felix Adler's wife was on record in her Who's Who entry as a supporter of women's suffrage. And despite Felix's opposition to the issue, the New York Society had a lobby, had in its lobby a booth for women's suffrage as the passage of the federal amendment became closer between 1910 and 1920. As I said, it's a complicated history. Now, Helen Goldmark Adler, Felix's wife, came from a family where women's achievements were honored. Helen took the Harvard university entrance exam and passed, even though as a woman she could not be admitted. Her later projects, which included in those projects many of the other women of the Ethical Society, included at one point establishing the first clinic for the poor in New York City. That was a visiting nurses project. And it also included a project to bottle milk safely for tenement babies. Remember that many of those mothers were working 12 to 14-hour days in sweatshops. Bob mentioned the Ethical Culture School. It's easy to say Felix Adler started the school, but women of the Ethical Society, including Helen Adler, did much of the work in the school's early years. Julie Newman, wife of the longtime leader of the Brooklyn Society, Henry Newman, was the founder of the Brooklyn Ethical Culture School. And over time, many notable women have come from ethical culture in Fieldston schools, including, for just some examples, Carly Simon and Laura Nairo, the singers, photographers Diana Arbus and Doris Ullman. Margaret Borg White's parents were members of the New York Society. Sports figure Charlotte Epstein, who is responsible for women being added to the swimming events of the Olympics. Writer Muriel Rukeyser, and performer and singer Lena Horne. And Lena Horne went to the Ethical Culture School because her grandmother who raised her, Cora Calhoun Horne, was a member of ethical culture. Through the Ethical Society's active involvement in the settlement house movement, many women came into the wider ethical culture circles. Lillian Wall, who's been mentioned already, and Jane Addams, each a founder of a famous settlement house, were closely associated with ethical culture. Wall was a member of the New York Society, and Jane Addams was a frequent guest and for a short period an associate leader of the Chicago Ethical Society. While we read in the history books that the National Child Labor Committee was founded by Felix Adler and an Episcopal priest, Edgar Murphy, many women were involved in it, including many directly and indirectly involved in our movement. Florence Kelly, Grace Abbott, Anna Garland Spencer, and many others as part of this effort. One of the biggest contributions of the women of ethical culture to the wider world began as a project of this society. 6 women of the New York Society in 1888, including Helen Adler, began meeting informally to study how to make child rearing into a science, actually researching for what worked to improve conditions of children and thus create a more just society. Over time, this project evolved into the Society for the Study of Child Nature and eventually to the Child Study Association. And it became a key proponent of research into education and developmental psychology and a promoter of many reforms that benefited children, including, of course, ending child labor. Some other just brief mentions of a few women. Helen Goldmark Adler had 9 siblings, including 3 other high-achieving sisters. Alice, who married the jurist Louis Brandeis, and who was herself an activist for women's suffrage, workers' rights, and the rights of children. Pauline Goldmark was one of the founders of the social work profession, and she applied research techniques to social reform. She worked with Anna Garland Spencer at the Columbia School of Social Work, and she was also part of the investigation of the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire. The 4th of these sisters, Josephine Goldmark, was also a social worker, reformer, organizer, and researcher. And for many years, she was part of the staff of the National Consumers League, which her partner, Florence Kelly, founded. Josephine and Pauline were part of the research work behind the famous Brandeis brief, which supported a Supreme Court case on limits of work hours for women. It was the first time that the Supreme Court had come out from under the shadow of always supporting property rights of owners over legislation that would protect the rights of workers. In 1929, the National Women's Conference formed, in particular to be involved in international efforts in support of peace. In 1947, the Women's Conference became associated with the United Nations and with the cause of international human rights. Through women like Rose Walker and friend of the movement Eleanor Roosevelt, this commitment continues today in the renamed and broadened organization, National Ethical Service. There are so many other women I could mention. I already mentioned Cora Calhoun Horn, a daughter of parents who, before the Civil War, had been a free black woman and an enslaved man. She was a figure in the Harlem Renaissance, the Urban League, and the NAACP. There was Mrs. Henry Olsheimer, who began the Manhattan Trade School for Girls, which Adler supported, and on whose board Mrs. Felix Adler served. Several key women came out of Philadelphia, including Jenny Fells, who's responsible for them having their meeting house today. And more recently, Sidonie Grunberg, acknowledged as one of the key experts in her time on sex education for children. Alice K. Politzer, known as Nanny, helped to found the Encampment for Citizenship, and who was key in that institution's thriving for many years. And as Richard mentioned, Sylvia Bloom, whose 1964 meeting on abortion paved the way for the pro-choice movement. Did you know, by the way, that the American Ethical Union is one of the organizations specifically mentioned in the famous Roe v. Wade Supreme Court case as an amicus curiae organization? And finally, Eleanor Black, wife of Algernon Black, wrote a book called From Adam's Rib to Women's Lib. I only have got time for just a few highlights of the many women of ethical culture, people who have often been on the leading edge of our movement, whether they're remembered or not, and who have seen to it that we are not just about finding a new alternative to traditional religion to nurture our own minds, although that's important, but that we in ethical culture have been committed to bringing out the human worth in people far beyond the immediate circles of our movement.
Lest there be any confusion, the National Ethical Service is no longer just a women's organization. It's been liberated. And many of its members are men, and actually all members of ethical societies are, by its charter, members of the NES, and you should participate. It does interesting work at the United Nations, trying to emphasize their deliberations, their actions. We're going to take a break for some music now. And the next song in your songbook here is called The One Who's Gone Before. So let's take a look. So I think that means you'll play who wants to give us the melody and great. it's like a 7-minute stretch. Social activism is the very DNA of which ethical culture was built. Any history of ethical culture would naturally devote substantial space to numerous projects undertaken by the societies. Did you know that some of the founders of the NAACP, the founding directors included leaders and members of ethical culture? For example, Henry Moskowitz, who was leader of the Downtown Ethical Society, was a founding director of the NAACP. He was also founding director of the Broadway League, and they gave out the Tony Awards. So, Oswald Garrison Villard, a member of NICEC here, was also a founding director of the NAACP. He was also an editor of the New York Post and publisher of The Nation magazine, and a vociferous pacifist during World War I. Other people who've come through here, the members, Roger Baldwin, the famous novelist, was a member here. Clarence Darrow, the crusading attorney, was a member of the Chicago Society. And of course, there were friends such as W.E.B. Du Bois, who spoke several times on this stage. Now, our lay leader here in New York, Phyllis Harrison Ross, is going to speak next about the Social Services Board. She's a psychiatrist who specialized in children's mental health, and in recent years, she has a CV that is too long to mention this morning. We'll take all day to talk about all her accomplishments, but she has been very active in the area of prison reform and on the New York State Corrections Commission, and she is chair of the Social Services Board here in New York. I would like to talk with us.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Just to make it a little more clear, I am a commissioner for the New York State Commission of Correction, and we have a responsibility to monitor and regulate all prisons, jails, lockups in the state. The Social Service Board, as it's called today, has had many names, was actually founded almost at the same time as the Society, 1879. And at that time, the idea that Dr. Adler had was that it would give an opportunity for people who weren't ready to join the society to partner with us, to collaborate with us on activities, social action, and to actually do specific programs. And over the years, we had many programs, and currently we have Empowering Ethical Elders, which is just what it says. We're trying to help people who are elders, who are seniors, who are seasoned, as I like to say, to actually enjoy those years and also continue to be active activists. We have a women's shelter named after Dr. Maria Fidesz Friedman, who for many years worked at these Our ladies who are 35 and older, many with medical problems, and we are managed by one of our members, Janice Busby, and we are also have volunteers that come from the society, from other societies, from other religious organizations around the city, and from Columbia University School of Social Work. We have a soccer team that is commissioned and run by SSB member Henry Bunch. It has predominantly poor and not a few undocumented children who otherwise would not be able to afford what they need in order to do soccer. And we have our flagship program, supportive television services that Dr. Frank Orignano runs, and that is a program that enables family members to visit with their incarcerated or hospitalized nursing home family members, and specifically children. We have a table out in the lobby. We hope you'll stop by, pick up a pamphlet or two, consider working with us. And then in the collaborating part of the operation that we have currently, we're collaborating with the radical aging movement, so they're moving in a very aggressive way. We have the Black Psychiatrists of Greater New York and Associates, of which Anne is a member, because even with the title, everyone is welcome to belong. We have the Auschwitz Institute for Peace and Reconciliation. I sit on their international board, and we've just completed our second program defining how to do genocide and atrocity prevention in countries around the world, Africa, South America. And that's a very exciting program because President Obama actually established a genocide prevention board, and there is legislation currently that is cooking to really make that a permanent commission. We have All Healers Mental Health Alliance, made up of mental health professionals, and you see a trend in the psychiatrists. They and clergy, faith-based leaders. We started after 9/11, and we've been working together, and then we really revved up during Katrina, started using telepsychiatry and technology, and we are currently now, I have to say this, we actually worked and established a chapter in the Red Cross training manual after Katrina on how to work a little more culturally proficiently for the Red Cross. And we're currently working in Flint. We kind of agitated and got a little action there recently. I'm sure you've seen that. And June 22nd, we're bringing the mayor of Flint to Washington. And for Washington, ethical people, please help us out. We will be having a rally in the town hall there with her. We have media dreams, and we work also with the Correctional Association. So we've got a lot going on, and we'd love to have you join in with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Phyllis. That was a little description of what's happening here in New York, and every society has its story to tell. Every society has its engagement, action, its social action, and I see some of the kids coming back. Okay. Well, where else can we see a mix of people and action and activity as we do here? Just another couple of names I want to highlight. Barry Commoner, who was considered one of the founders of the modern environmental movement, was a member of the St. Louis Society. Alton Lemon, a member of the Philadelphia Society, was the plaintiff in a landmark lawsuit that went to the Supreme Court of the United States on a question of church-state control. And it was in that case named after him, the Lemon test, which is to assess whether church-state relations are legal or not. Well, next I'd like to introduce our tech specialist, who is also Bart Gordon, leader of the Westchester Society and executive director of the Federation of Art Societies, the American Ethical Union. He's going to talk a little bit about the place of ethical culture in the humanist movement today. Is that what we're going to talk about?
That's correct.
Oh, great. Okay.
And going for the future. So let me just say, I usually don't recommend that people spend a lot of time on their phones during these meetings, but today, given that we're doing a webinar and broadcasting to several societies, I thought this would be a good time to be checking my text messages. And so you may not be able to see it from here, but I have about 17 reams of paper if I printed it out of people saying, well, I can only see the top of people's heads, showing the corners of places on the screen. So now, they say they can actually see it, so very sorry, it's coming from me here now, or whatever. So as the executive director for the American Ethical Union, I get a fair amount of opportunity to check in with various ethical societies across the country. I also get a chance to sit in on national meetings of secular leaders. This is a group we call the Heads, which was kind of bizarre if you ask me, but now they call it the Secular Leaders Council or Conference. And people from the American Atheists, the American Humanists Association, the Freethinker groups, all these groups come together, and the heads of those groups have an opportunity to kind of talk shop, get some figuring about what's going on in their organization's lives, and what things they need to think about going forward. And I imagine it's no surprise to you that we are living in interesting times for humanists. For one thing, it seems like there's a lot more humanists and freethinkers around than there used to be. Is that anyone else in a sense? I mean, you turn on to the station, and it's much more likely that you're going to hear someone describe themselves as an atheist or a humanist than used to be the case. And this reflects a growing secularism that's happening in this country. So when they do studies, people, especially folks under 40, there's a growing pulling away from organized religions and a growing tendency for people to describe themselves as non-theistic. Right? It's been growing over the course of time. And that actually provides, we would think, some nice opportunities for ethical societies that are home for freethinkers, humanists, atheists, and others who are not so into the traditional religious institution. However, my own sense is the thing that's irritating people the most is the institution, not the faith. Right? It's not what's in the Bible that's troubling people so much. It's how the organizations function. It's what the organizations demand of people. Those are the things people are getting tired of. And you know what? We're in that boat too. As an institution, as institutional congregations, that's a tide that we'll be wrestling with, I would think, over the next several decades. Right? Because for us to operate as congregations is a relatively expensive proposition compared to sitting at home and joining a chat group. Right? Having a building, having professionals, or even having program people, bringing in speakers, putting the heat on, whatever it is. These are all things that are going to be taking resources that require people to really be consistently supporting the venture. Well, all the humanist groups are going to be facing these kind of pressures like we are. I believe this is a time when the American Ethical Union and our ethical societies can provide a help to these other organizations. When I sit around the table and I say, we're now celebrating 140 years, there's like a very old organization for the humanist population. Now, of course, that reflects our demographics too. But that being said, it is amazing that we have managed to bring forward the original notions about what it means to be an ethical society into the 21st century and still make it work. So there's three areas I think we're still making it work and that we have as a gift to the world around us. The first is a basis for secular ethics. I hear a lot of humanists talk about, I can be good without God. My question is, why would you be? What is your foundation for why that's important to you? What are you saying about this? If you can be good, is it an option? Right? You really can do otherwise, and so maybe you'll choose to do it, maybe you won't. One of the things ethical culture brings is a mentality that says we understand the role of service, the role of engagement, the notion that people need to connect with each other in ways that bring out good qualities in order for humanity to thrive, in order for humanity to have a worthwhile existence. We need to be able to do these things. And we have a basis for this. And we have a history for this. We have a track record for this. And our communities are that track record. That's just number two. The congregational quality that we have offers the opportunity for people to participate in a sustaining community. A sustaining community that helps us connect with that ethical drive at the same time. Right? It's not just a club. This is a community. This is a gathering of people who care and want to see the world transformed into a more ethical place. This is the second thing we bring. And the third, I saw them come in the room, but they'll have to come again, I guess, are ethics for children. We have incredible ethics for children programs. And in a growing secular time, when you have all these young adults who are saying, well, I don't think I really want to be part of a church or synagogue or whatever, what's going to happen for them with their children when their children are coming of age to be making questions and wondering what will happen? What will be the supports to help them engage their children toward becoming good people and people who care and people who act on those cares? Our Ethics for Children's programs are doing that and doing that really well. And we can continue to do that, not just for ourselves, but to offer this to a broader world around us as well. Because from the get-go, ethical culture has been starting from the individuals, but always with an eye towards what will happen for the larger world. How are we contributing? How are we living in a way that makes the world we live in a better place for ethical living, for everyone? That's what we're about. So our future, hopefully, will be bright in that aspect. We'll see.
Thank you, Bart. Actually, there are some initiatives that are started through the ADU, the outreach to other humanist communities, and also through the membership and outreach committee to reach out to those individuals who are thinking of starting their own ethic culture type discussion group. And it needs some support, this initiative. It can't just happen automatically. We have some ways that people can contribute to this through the 100 by 100 campaign. If you've heard of that, if you haven't, yes, and or donations to the ADU itself. It really needs help in order to accomplish that. Anne would like to come up and talk to us a little bit about progress with FES, Future of Ethical Societies. So come on.
How many of you have heard about the Future of Ethical Societies, FES? Wonderful. Okay. Well, we tried to get a representative here today, but they're very busy and often out and about. And so I am representing FES today. I obviously am much older than the limit, although I have to say that FES has been pushing that age limit. It was originally college students, and I remember when it this started about 10 years ago. We were at an AU assembly. There were a number of high school students who were part of YES, which is Youth and Ethical Societies, who came. And they said, we've got to do something to stay connected when we're in college. We need to do something to connect the people that we're going to be meeting in college. And so they started Future of Ethical Societies. It has been extremely successful. But guess what? Those founders graduated from college and they still wanted to stay together. And so they pushed the age a little more. And now it's, believe it or not, up to 35. So if you are between the ages of 18 and 35 years, you may be part of FEST, Future of Ethical Societies. And you still have some time to register for the next conference. They have an annual conference over Memorial Day weekend. And they will have a program here in New York with the platform at the Brooklyn Society. And there'll be home hospitality in my home, which is just a couple of blocks away from the Brooklyn Society. You have until May 19th to register. So if you are between the ages of 18 and 35 years, or if you know anyone who is, and you would like to go to the conference and encourage them to go, please do. Check on AEU.org and register through there, and please make sure that you come and support the Future of Ethical Societies. Now, we have some more future people coming in, and I hope our children are here. Could someone maybe give a call to them out in the hallway? Because next up are our children. And they have been doing a project upstairs. They had an activity book about the childhood of Felix Adler. It was something that was put together by our colleague Joy McConnell's son. So they've been working on the activity book and also putting together some banners because they are representing our future. And I see Audrey coming now, so I think we're going to have a little parade coming up. All right. How about if we welcome them back with some applause?
Felix planted a seed. Felix guys can all go do this for them. And ready? It's kind of like a high five, but it's called high peace. So high peace.
High piece each other.
So yes. Every week in most societies, we have a collection, and we share it here at the New York Society with some other organization which we are trying to help out in the future. But as today is a Founders Day, we're really talking about ourselves and the mission that we ourselves are promoting. Today's collection will be shared with